Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Data Center Exchange. Now, today we're going to be covering a very important discussion point, and we have a very special guest to help me shine a light on this particular talking point. Now, it is a topic that I feel impacts every industry on the planet, but to varying different degrees. And when it comes to the data center world, I think this discussion point should really be front and center across the industry now, but also in the years to come as well. And you may have listened to previous episodes of the Data Center Exchange where I've covered the skills gap and some of the possible remedies around this. But from various different studies and statistics, it appears that there's only 20% of women in the entire data center workforce. So I think it's absolutely essential we address the gender gap as soon as we possibly can. And because it's not just creating problems for today, but it really is an opportunity if we get it right for the future as well in solving some of those skill shortages and the issues that we encounter along the way. So the gender gap is what I want to discuss today, and I've got no better person to help me tackle that subject than Lindsey Bruner, who is the Chief Operating Officer at CleanArc Data Centers. Now, I think she's based in Texas, so it's pretty early there today. So, Lindsey, thank you so much for joining the Data Center Exchange and being our guest today.
My pleasure, Del.
So what we normally do is before we dive into the main sort of talking point for today, I kind of want to understand a bit more about you and your background. So we normally break this up into pre-data center, pre-digital infrastructure days. So can you tell us a bit about your sort of pre-data center journey up until you entered the industry?
Sure. So I like to describe myself as a recovering lawyer, which is absolutely accurate. My education is I've got a law degree, and I worked in private law practice for several years, and then went in-house with a renewable energy company and was in-house counsel to them for the better part of a decade. So a heavy background in real estate, construction, development, but all on the legal side. So that was a very interesting training for where I'm at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did you get into the industry? When did the data center industry come calling?
So it was 2016 timeframe. My spouse at the time and I were looking to leave Colorado and get closer to one of our families because we had a young daughter. And where my family is based, it's Central Illinois. It's not really a great. It's great for a lot of things, but it doesn't have a really heavy, business presence. And so his family was from Texas. He had a family in North Texas. So I started looking here, connected with a recruiter, and explored a couple of positions. And then one day she called me and said, "Hey, have you ever heard of the data center industry?" I said, no, what's that? And so she explained a little bit about it, and it became clear. The way I sort of connected in my head was, well, I've been in the renewables industry. I've been on the side of the grid that is, putting megawatts onto the grid, and the data center industry is just taking megawatts off the grid. So started, the process with that company, which is CyrusOne, and joined them in 2016 on the legal team.
Okay, excellent. Now, I know you alluded to the fact that we used a recruiter, which is great news. But you alluded to the fact that you didn't really know what the data center industry was. But, in reality, what sort of knowledge did you have about it? Was it literally really didn't know, or you're kind of aware of it?
I really didn't know. I had not, and I see this a lot now being on, having been in the industry for a while and being on the other side of some of the pushback to the things that we represent as an industry. I was just uneducated. I was uninformed. I had no idea this entire digital infrastructure that was behind everything that we do on our computers, on our phones, everything that we do online, all of this shift that we're making from a paper society to a digital society. I had no idea really where all that existed. So it's been a learning curve. It's been a good one.
Absolutely. And your career trajectory, it looks from afar, has changed maybe considerably to what you thought maybe it was going back before you entered the industry. Can you give us a bit of an insight into, the trajectory of your career and the direction of your career since you've entered the industry?
Sure. So, like I said, I started off at CyrusOne on the legal team. Again, supporting site selection, supporting construction, those development aspects. And after a couple of years in that role, I had some conversations with a few members of the senior team at CyrusOne, and was offered the opportunity to step onto the business side and start running the team that used to be site selection. So I jumped at that opportunity. I thought it was fantastic. Those types of things don't come up very often. So I was like, yes, let's try something new. Let's get on the other side of the table and be commercial instead of business. And that was great. Again, it was a very steep learning curve. Changing the way you approach things from a legal perspective to a more holistic commercial perspective. But having been an in-house attorney working in businesses for so long at that point, I really had a great foundation for being able to understand both the legal and the commercial implications of all the decisions. But it was really cool to be able to be on the strategic side instead of the advisory side. So
Yeah, excellent. And then onto your role today at CleanArc, COO. Can you give us?
Yeah.
We'll come on to CleanArc and what potentially is going on there towards the end of the discussion. But what do you do now as COO? What's your day job consist of?
So, CleanArc is an early stage company. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work in building things. And I liken it a lot to putting together one of those 1,500 piece puzzles without having the box. So I have no idea what the puzzle is supposed to look like when it's done. I know that it's got four corners and it's generally rectangular, but I don't know what the picture is. So it's putting those pieces together, and sometimes it's putting something together, setting out a process and taking a few steps back, and you're like, okay, we've been working with this for a little while, and we need to change this and that to make it more efficient. But that's really the part of my job that I love, is figuring that out. And so there's a great alignment there with being in a startup environment. There's challenges as well. I wear a lot of hats right now, and I look forward to the day when we're a bigger organization and I can be more guiding and less active in some of those areas. But I get to work with a lot of really, really smart people, putting this company on the map. And so that's really a thrill.
Yeah, that's really cool. I imagine it's a very dynamic. Every day is different. Some
Very,
cliches there, but yeah, can imagine that
very
applies for
dynamic.
sure. Yeah. So look, just to move on to the main talking point. I know we had a discussion offline about this, and it seemed like you were very passionate about it. So I guess my first question on the gender gap is within the data center industry is where are we up to now with it, and how do you see it from your side now broadly?
So I think that's a really great question, is where are we at now? Because I am starting to see some of those indications that the ball is moving forward. I was in some meetings last week with my company, and a lot of our third-party consultants had a big alignment meeting on some aspects of process that we're building, really exciting stuff. But I looked around the room, and in a room full of very technical people, engineers, architects, different vendors on sort of that side of the table, there were 6 women in that room, and 4 of us were senior women. So that's such a big shift. It was still we're still maybe, I don't know, 20% of the room, but in the scheme of rooms where I've been one of 2 women, in there, or where I've been the only woman at the table, it was a major shift, and it felt really great. And I was talking to a couple of the other women that were in there, and we all recognized it. So so I do see things starting to sort of shift, and that's the thing, is it's a process that started 15, 20 years ago when STEM became just more of a thing in general. And so you're now starting to see that very first generation of younger people that got the very beginnings of that STEM education coming into the workforce. And so the tide is starting to turn a little bit. You're seeing more women in technical disciplines and more women in construction disciplines. And And that's really great.
It is really great. I think when we talk about initiatives relating to young people coming into the industry or the gender gap, that there's no real quick fix, is there? I don't think it's
No,
something that has to have a continuous process, focus on initiatives that don't. I think that's sometimes the challenge, that because you don't see instant results, it's very easy to just focus on the here and now. But it is really cool to see from your perspective that there's that sort of progression and green shoots, or which is really,
yeah,
really good. Um,
yeah.
what do you think the contributing factors are that's led us to where we are in terms of the imbalance that you see? And look, I'm really quick to say this isn't just a data center
No,
challenge. It's
no,
a wider challenge, just particularly across, like you say, construction engineering.
yeah. I don't think there's anything that's necessarily specific to the data center industry. Like you said, it's there, in the corporate world in general, there is an imbalance. And you see that imbalance become even starker as the higher up in corporate hierarchies you get. So it's not exclusive to data centers. It's not exclusive to tech. You see it in banking, you see it in law. I think over 50% of law school applicants and law students are women, which is representative of the general population. But by the time you get to the senior partner ranks at high level firms, you're back down into that 20% or lower number. It's not necessarily a barrier to entry. It is a barrier to advancement, or a challenge to advancement, and what things can we do in any corporate environment to make sure that those barriers, those challenges are not only addressed, but first that they're seen, and that they're not just sort of brushed off. So
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And when it comes to the policies that you see, not necessarily in the organization you're with
mhm.
now or previous, but just wider across the industry, um, do you feel that there's a progressive nature to the policies that data center organizations and the industry is adopting to provide women with a platform to thrive in the industry?
So I think a lot of we've all come to follow very closely what our key customers do. And so as more of us in the industry have been tied more and more to the big tech companies, you see sort of those changes happening at the top. One of the biggest shifts that I've seen in just the past decade that this has been, in existence. My daughter's 10 now, and when she was born, it was still a rarity across any corporate environment to have a parental leave policy of any kind. And now that is, in terms of benefits, that's fairly table stakes across the board. And so those are the types of programs that, yeah, they absolutely benefit mothers, but they also benefit fathers. And that's sort of making it in something that's equitable, and that is something that either parent can take. Um, it really sort of fosters the idea that this isn't just a women's thing. This is a parent thing. This is how we're going to support working parents, period. And those are sort of the things that sort of, it makes it just more routine and less like, oh, we've got to do this for women, or oh, we've got to do this for mothers. It's just sort of, it's just a benefit. It's a benefit that any parent can take. So
Yeah, yeah, and you're right there. I mean, when I became a parent in 2014, and the policies in play now across industries are far more advanced than,
mhm.
when the opportunities I had when my kids were very young.
Right.
And how much do you think the workplace has evolved in over the period that you've been in the industry,
Mhm.
Lindsey, in terms of creating an inclusive culture and
Mhm.
workplace for women, for everybody, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's definitely more of an approachability aspect. There's less emphasis on rigidity, and that's one of the things that being in the tech industry is great, as opposed to being in more formal settings like law or banking. There's just a little bit less rigidity. There's no dress codes. For the most part, we're all sort of flexible in terms of work environment, which is another thing that's really helped. A lot of people is the availability of remote or hybrid work, and that again, it's not just parents, it's not just working moms. That helps everybody have a little bit better prioritization in their work versus their non-work life. I lost the plot of the question there.
Oh, don't worry. I mean, I think you're right though. I think I think the flexibility, there's I know it's a very demanding, quite an intense industry in many ways, but then in others, in the workplace environment, in my experience of meeting with customers and the people within it, there's also a relaxed nature. It's not too stuffy, it's not too corporate. Right. It's quite welcoming in my opinion, right. From what I see.
Yeah, and so the ability to sort of be bring your whole self to work, not in a way that's that's divisive to other people, but being able to bring your personality and your hobbies and to connect with your coworkers on a more personal level, as opposed to just showing up. I do feel that I see that more in the data center industry than I have in other corporate environments I've been in. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And I read an article in preparation for this episode. It was from 2022, 2023, and it was just saying that data centers are one big sort of boys club. To be honest, I'm sure there's elements of that still out there, and I'm sure that was, but I do see such a diverse mix of people across the industry, and that is evolving. 100%. That is happening.
Absolutely. And, it's diversity and inclusion, especially there's a few places in the US where those words have taken on a very, they've been given a very divisive meaning and bent in interpretation. But you do have to step back and remember that diversity means not just that you're hiring a few people because of who they are or who they're not, but that you are putting together a team and a company that brings different perspectives, brings different levels of experience, brings different, approaches to doing things. So, whether that's, maybe it's somebody who's completely new to the industry, has no background whatsoever. Maybe it's somebody that you are promoting into, a role that they haven't had before. Maybe it's somebody who is coming from a background of a ton of experience, and, you're bringing them for just their perspective on, okay, well, we're going to change things up. How do we best approach this? So, and it's that, that is diversity as well. It's diversity of experience and perspective, and not just, the other tick boxes that you often see.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, you made reference to your daughter earlier. I think you said is she 10? Is that right?
She's 10, yeah.
10.
Almost 10, yeah.
So one of the things I talk about a lot is grassroots and not just women and females. It's anybody, but getting them into STEM related subjects early. But I believe off camera, you said your daughter wanted to be an engineer. Is that right?
Yeah.
Which is super cool. So, we need more people like that. So how did that come about? And let's hope that stays, because that can change, as we all know.
Yeah. So, her school is has a really, really great STEAM program. So they, their education curriculum around that adds arts into there as well. But they have, these STEAM nights where you can go and it's open to the whole lower school. And they set up they have a different theme every year, and they have all these great experiments and projects that you can do in 4 or 5 minutes to explore different aspects of STEAM, disciplines. And she's always been really interested in building things and creating things. And so it wasn't necessarily anything that her dad or I kind of directed her toward. We just let her naturally explore her own interests, and as she kind of learned about different careers and things, she's sort of honed into this idea of being an engineer, specifically a robotics engineer, because she wants to build robots. So, and that's at 10, but I love hearing that that's something that she's interested in, and that I do also love that there's an alignment with what I do, that I can introduce her to, things in the data center industry, be like, well, this is what your robots might be able to do someday, or this AI thing, your robot, you could be able to train your robot to do XYZ or whatever it is. So
yeah, that's super cool. And I think I'm only talking about my experiences as a parent, but just speaking to friends and family who also parents.
mm,
But I guess you hear a lot of parents say, I just want my child to kind of be happy. I don't mind what they do when they grow up, as long as they're happy in their own skin. But I do think it's really important they get that exposure, maybe not necessarily
oh,
directly
yeah.
from parents. I think it can help, but the education system really opening the door to some of the opportunities, and almost inspiring young people at that age to just be interested in it first and foremost.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I've started to get a lot of outreach from different, higher education programs, looking into internships. Not necessarily something we as a company are ready for at this moment, but it's the fact that exists, or some of the very data center specific programs that we're starting to see. I know there's several in your neck of the woods. We're starting to see them here. There's more technical programs, and that was something that we saw in the renewables industry, a decade and a half ago, starting to do technical programs to support, the facilities technicians that go climb turbines and maintain those generators up there. So I think that's great as well, because the other piece of this is, yeah, there's a ton of technology and there's a ton of interesting stuff going on inside the servers, right, that are in our facilities. But there's also an entire network of people that are needed to put those together, and careers in the trades, careers on the construction side. Those are not those are skills that can be applicable to any number of industries. And if you want to support manufacturing, and if US based manufacturing, for example, if you want to support that, if you want to support some of that industry being present in this country, then those are also skills that need to be added. And there's a huge workforce problem coming for a lot of industries, but construction and the trades is one of them.
It's
So
so true.
we need more people just in general in this, across
Absolutely.
this whole spectrum. Yeah.
Because as you say, you can look at absolute amazing, the robotics engineer and the cool sounding jobs as such, but the industry needs every single area to, for support for the growth that seemingly is already happening, but is definitely going to be coming across the next few years. So that's the grassroots, and we understand the importance of that. But when focusing on women specifically who enter the industry, how important of a role do you think mentorship and sponsorship within the industry plays a part in almost paving a way and aspiring female future leaders in the data center world?
It's absolutely critical. I wouldn't be in this role if I didn't have mentors, and particularly sponsors. And I think there's a distinction between the two. A mentor is someone who sort of coaches you personally. Like that's kind of a sounding board, sort of, how do I develop personally? A sponsor is somebody who goes into rooms that you're not in and advocates for you. And so, I had sponsorship to move from the legal side to the business side. I had sponsorship to move from my VP role at CyrusOne to a COO role. Like those were people that took a look at, what I had done and had a vision of what I was capable of, and took steps to put me into that position. And that is really something that is something that all, we can do a much better job of as companies, it's that development piece. It's not just hiring, it's not just benefits. It is that development piece, and that's something. It's made such a big difference for me. I'm really passionate about making sure that that's something that we do as a company, as we're bringing on employees, that we're giving them those those tools to, to advance, if they want a promotion track, then let's work on, what that might look like. If you just want, to build skills, there's a track for that too. So it's not just looking at, oh, well, you've been here in this role for X number of years. Let's just promote you to a management role. That may not be what that person wants. That may not be where that person's ultimate skill set lies. And so you get those mismatches, you get burnout, or you don't get that development, and then people leave to go find it somewhere else. And after you've spent, a lot of time getting someone to that point, to have them leave because they don't feel like they can go any further. I mean, that is not just it's not capital efficient. It's bad for your bottom line, but it's bad from the loss of that institutional knowledge and that support that person could have given your organization going forward.
Yeah.
And obviously sometimes you do have to exit in order to make the next move, but that should be something that's like, okay, it's a gratitude thing. Like, I received everything I needed to get to this point from this organization, and this now they understand and are supportive of the fact that I have to go somewhere else to make it that next level. And that's an evolution. That's an emotional intelligence thing that, again, it's something that has to be developed, I think, to be really useful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What you said there, I mean, I think attrition is going to be a major challenge, not just hiring, but attrition and keeping hold of your best people. I think that sometimes what I see when industries experience significant growth is it's so fast and frantic and furious that it's making time for that development piece, that nurturing piece, that sponsorship piece to allow people to fulfill their potential. I think the businesses that kind of get that right over the next few years will not only attract people, they'll actually retain more of their people as well.
And it obviously you need some real corporate teeth behind it. You need an executive sponsor, somebody that really believes in it and invests in that type of program to give that training. But honestly, when it comes to putting it into practice, I think people build it up like, oh, development is this huge, big thing that's going to take up all of my time. It can really come down to, like, do you talk with your team once a week? Do you just have that 5 or 10 minute conversation? Do you have that, 30-minute conversation at the beginning of each month? Be like, hey, what are you doing? What are your priorities this month? Where do you need support? Like, and just building those little bits of connection, I think, is a really great place to start.
It really is simple, but so effective and often forgotten or overlooked, for sure. Just in terms of your journey and your sponsorship, as I'm probably putting you on the spot now, and tell me to pass. Do you want to? Who's been inspirational in your sort of journey? Who's really that you might maybe someone you don't name, but can talk around on what they did and the impact that they had, or maybe you want to name them and shout them out. But if you have any pivotal people in your journey yourself.
Yeah, I'll call out a couple of people. I mean, there's a ton of people that I could name. Actually, I'll just Kevin Timmons and Robert Jackson at CyrusOne helped sort of move me to that first switch from commercial to business. Jonathan Schildkraut is now at Compass, was a huge mentor for me in terms of his approach to leadership and his approach to relating to everybody around him. It really changed my perspective on how to build relationships with people. Like, there was no one who was, outside of Jonathan's scope to talk to and to relate to and sort of, understand, who they were and how they impacted what the company was doing. Another great mentor for me is a woman named Maureen Callahan, who was a partner at one of our law firms. And, so coming up into the data center industry as an attorney, and seeing, having another woman, on the outside who was, just absolutely top of her game. But, again, she taught me so much about thinking about things and making sure that I was thinking about them in multiple dimensions. And so, and she's become a dear friend. So it's great to have those, and there's many other people that sort of have touched that sphere, but just absolutely great people to work with. Diane Moorfield, in terms of other women that I look up to, Diane Moorfield, my boss back at Res, Marcia Emmons, just a lot of great role models, both as leaders and as female leaders. So
I think when you speak to anybody at your level, Lindsay, leadership, executive level, I think they've always. I think one common theme is the strength of and the investment that they've had in their career growth and development from other leaders around them. Not taking anything away from individuals' talent, work rates, but you need people along the way to help you
absolutely.
and see the potential and develop it and take time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I have that now. Jim Trout is our CEO at CleanArc, and I am constantly learning from Jim. He's been in the industry for a very long time. He's done a lot of great things, and so he's a fantastic person to be a resource. Both just passive observance and actually having directly coach and guide me as we take this company forward. So
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned a little bit, a little while ago about giving exposure to younger people, scholarships, and maybe internships in the future, that sort of thing. One of the things I always talk about within the industry is it being an industry that's almost invisible by design. As I say, you were a seasoned professional yourself, kind of on the peripheries of certain elements of the market, but didn't really know anything about it, I guess, to some degree. How important is it that we open the doors more to people from other industries, to younger people, and to just shine a light on the industry a little bit more than what we have over, the last decade or two?
I think it's actually critically important. Again, I go back to the big tech companies that are the major customers and data centers. They definitely have tended to be invisible by design. But I think the bigger that the industry grows, the more it sort of sits in public view. There's a tremendous irony in sitting in a public hearing where the major opposition against your project or the major complainant against your facility has a Facebook page about you. They're sitting there, they're tweeting about how terrible data centers are. And so the irony of do you realize that platform you're using is hosted in a facility just like the one you're trying to quash? Do you understand that your ability to do online banking, to have telemedicine, to chat with your team, to do video calls, to do, to FaceTime with your parents or whatever it is, all of that runs through a data center. So many aspects of our lives are intertwined with this now. And I think as an industry, we have to be better about educating people about the benefits of what we do as an industry, and but also we also do have to be responsive to people's concerns about noise, about power consumption, about impacts to water supplies. And the industry is really being responsive to those things, but the pushback we're getting is a lot of outdated understanding of what these facilities are and how they're operated.
Yeah, no, I think probably I think there's some lazy kind of views on the industry. I hate to that they're my words, not yours, but you read some articles out there that just seem like pretty, people aren't informed or haven't taken the time. That I think the industry has to have empathy towards people's concerns 100%. And I think it is. I think it does demonstrate that, but I think it gets attacked in a number of ways that I think doesn't really balance the argument as much as it really could. But I think educating people is the only way to go, because the industry allows us to do just a heap of things that we just couldn't we couldn't live or survive in the way that we do now without it.
Right. Right.
Last kind of question on this, on the gender diversity or the gender gap across the industry. What do you think the future looks like in that respect, in respect of data centers? That's a hard question to answer. Sorry.
No, it's actually, I think it's actually pretty easy. I was profiled a little bit ago, and it was a great profile. I was really excited to be selected for it, but the title was something about top 10 business women to watch in 24, which is great. But in terms of, gender diversity, gender representation, it shouldn't be remarkable. It shouldn't be remarkable that I am a woman's, like that word should not precede my title.
Yeah.
Woman should not precede my title. I'm just a COO or a CEO or wherever that ends up, but that should be the goal. It shouldn't be remarkable to see any number of women in a technical space or a construction space or a legal space or a banking space. It just should be.
Yeah. Okay. That would be. Do you think we'll ever get there? I don't know. I'd love to. I think that's what we have to work towards for sure. We got a long way to go, but what I like about what you've said today, Lindsey, is that you're on the inside and you're seeing the progress that we're making, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for being such a great guest on and discussing around that topic. It's not something we're going to solve on one podcast, of course, but the more we talk about it, the more we I think the more progress we can make. Just before we leave, I've got a couple of questions just on just what the next 12. I always ask what the next 12 months looks like for you personally, and any insight you can give to CleanArc. I know that you can't reveal everything, but what the next 12 months has in store.
So I think the next 12 months will be really exciting for CleanArc. There's a lot of things that I can't talk about right now, but hopefully you will see them in the press over the coming 6 to 12 months. So, but we're excited to be growing. We're excited about the things that are happening for us. So it should be a great 24, 25.
I need to take this question off my list, really, because no one can ever really reveal
No,
anything,
we're all gonna be pretty
which is
curious.
not a criticism. I understand the industry. I totally get it. So I don't even know why I ask it, but I know it sounds like a really exciting time for you guys. So I definitely wish you all the best, and we'll be keeping an eye on the news for sure. My last question: if you hadn't entered the industry and got into CyrusOne back in 2016. Would you be a recovering lawyer now, or what would you be up to?
That's a really great question, and I have been thinking about that a lot. Like where would I be, 8 years from that move if I hadn't taken this data center path. There's a part of it that says that there was no other path for me to take. Like this was I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I think that's great. But if I had taken a different path, if I had stayed, in that job or in Colorado, I'd like to think that I still would have found a way to end up on, in an executive role on the business side. Like that's something that it's always been sort of on my my vision board, my my goals of the next few years. So there would have been some other path to get to something like this, but I would still be here.
It's still be there. Well, the industry is richer for having you within it. So very pleased you made the move in 2016. You've been an amazing guest, Lindsey. Thank you very much for being a guest on the Data Center Exchange. Wish you all the best for the rest of the year.